welcome back to Faith in 15 or Less with me, Jasmine Marie. This is your biblically based midweek faith boost, and this is episode 27. So I do have one announcement before we get started. It's the top of the year, and for years I've done goal setting and vision casting workshops, and last year I launched that publicly and did a really powerful session called Plan with Jazz. And so I'm bringing that back. If you are a planner, if you have goals that you want to accomplish this year, then I definitely recommend that you sign up to attend one of our group virtual planning sessions. You have two options to attend, and I just want to help you plan with intention, but also to set strategies in place to become the person that you need to be to carry out the call on your life, not just to set goals. So check that out by going to jazzthepoet.com/events-1. All right, so let's get started. If you watched last week, if you did not, pause, go back, watch episode 26. But if you watched last week, then you know that we are in a study of Esther all month long. And last week, I gave you an assignment, which was to read Esther 1 and 2. So if you did it, and I got some text messages that people were doing it. So if you did it, then this week, we're going to be picking up with Esther chapters 3 and 4. And because I'm doing full chapters, I'm not able to read the whole text for you. So definitely recommend that you put in the work and go read that on your own. But I do want to give you a summary about these chapters. And so for these chapters, I want to look at three people: Haman, Mordecai, and Esther. And in chapter 3, it's all about the attack of the enemy. It's all about Haman, right? So in chapter 2, we learned that Esther was promoted to queen. And then in chapter 3, we learned that there is a man named Haman who also gets promoted into a position. That's the first thing. Once he's in that position, the king commands that people pay him honor by bowing to him whenever he enters the courts. And everybody does that except for Mordecai, Esther's relatives. Mordecai refuses to bow. He tells them that he's Jewish and he's just not going to bow. He really doesn't give them any explanation beyond that. And so Haman becomes prideful. The people come to him like, yo, what are you going to do? This one man is just like not listening to you. So after getting promoted, he becomes prideful. And then he takes action out of his anger. He goes to the king and proposes that the king takes out all of the Jewish people on a particular day in the following year, because these people have different belief systems and they don't follow the king's custom. He also offers to pay the king a certain amount of money after that happens. And so the king agrees. He doesn't really know the backstory or who the people are. And that decree is issued. That's chapter 3. Like, good thing happened in chapter 2. And then all of chapter 3 is about the attack and plan of the enemy. Now, also in chapter 3, we see Mordecai, right? And Mordecai is just brave, right? He's brave first when he refuses to bow, because the second thing is he is standing on his morals. He's standing on his belief system. He's standing on his values, and he's committed to his people. And so he's so committed to his people that once he finds out about the decree, he rips his clothes and puts on these mourning clothes and just kind of like wails publicly and bitterly about what happens, to the point where Esther's people get wind of it at the palace and they inform her. And so when she sends her people to inquire, Mordecai is direct. He tells her, look, this is what's happening to all of our people, including you. And I think you need to go to the king and make a plea for our lives. When Esther is hesitant, he sends back a message to her, which I will read to us because I think it's very important. And that's Esther 4, verses 13 through 14. I'll be reading from the NIV version, and it reads as follows. Mordecai sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. And I think that verse is very powerful. It actually has everything to do with our topic for today, which is promotion, bravery, and timing. And the last thing I'll say about these two chapters is chapter 4, we learn from Esther, right? Esther is in position, but she's hesitant to make a move. She is, however, reflective when Mordecai comes to her. And as a result of her reflection, she chooses to fast and she's willing to go to the king on behalf of her people. She's willing to do something that morally feels right. And so that's what we see in these two chapters. And I'm going to dive in to 3 points about promotion, bravery, and timing. So in case you're wondering, what does this have to do with faith? A lot of times we find ourselves in faith moments because we've been put in position or we've received a promotion, and what we are called to seems bigger than what we ever thought was possible, or it seems larger than what we feel equipped to handle. And so a lot of times being in position or being promoted does come with a faith moment, a moment of trusting God, a moment of looking to God for the next direction, for the strength, for the strategy. And so the first thing that I think we learn from these two chapters is that promotion comes with submission and responsibility. Promotion requires these two things because both people are promoted in chapters 1 through 4. Esther gets promoted to queen and Haman gets promoted to one of the highest positions in the palace, essentially right under the king. However, how they handle their promotion is very differently. For example, Haman immediately gets prideful in his position. He's upset because Mordecai won't bow down to him. He's now focused on getting the proper praise from the people more than he's focused on what his position requires. On the other hand, Esther is in the palace, and at first she's a little comfortable, right? Comfortable because she's kind of like scared to take a risk. When she first hears about what Mordecai would like her to do, she's like, I'm in this position. These are the rules. This is what the king said. Not really trying to ruffle any feathers. And so my question to you is, what's your focus when you are in position? Are you comfortable? Are you prideful? Or are you focused on submitting to God? Ultimately, Esther becomes reflective and she submits, right? She's willing to be used as a vessel. She's submitted to God, to her moral obligation. She's also aware of her responsibility. When Mordecai said what he said in chapter 4, verses 13 and 14, he reminded her, you're not just here to be here and look pretty. You're here because where you've been placed comes with responsibility. And it's important that we keep that in mind when we're in the position that God has given us. Number 2, right? Because responsibility can be weighted. And so that's why we have bravery. And so what I want us to know about bravery is we must have the bravery to stand firm on our belief and values when we're in position. And this is what I think we see first in Mordecai, right? He stood firm when he refused to bow to Haman, perhaps because that felt like idolatry, or perhaps because Haman came from a long line of people who were at bat with the people of Israel. Whatever the reason is, we don't really know. Mordecai stood firm on what he believed. He also stood firm on his belief and values when he bravely went to Queen Esther and challenged her on what she needed to do or what she was hesitant to do. And so bravery in position might require us to act differently than other people. In Mordecai's case, everybody was bowing down to Haman, but he would not, right? So what is it that you are doing differently? Because you are a child of God, because you were placed in position for God's purpose. Bravery might also require us to challenge some people, to challenge some norms, to push a little bit, right? Even people in higher positions than us. And Mordecai had no problem doing that in these chapters. Also, bravery might require us to take a risk. Ultimately, Esther agrees to go before the king after a period of fasting and prayer, right? She's willing to take a risk. And she's not doing that alone because she submitted. She submitted to God. She sought his advice, his guidance, and his strategy. And then After the prayer and strategy, she was going to be willing to go. And she said, if I perish, I perish. The third thing I want us to think about is timing, right? Because sometimes we feel like we always have time. I'll do that tomorrow. But a lot of times when we're in position, timing requires us to obey swiftly. The timing that comes with our call requires us to obey swiftly. And so, how long does it take you to obey what you feel prompted to do in your spirit? As we grow and mature in our walks with God, we don't have as much time to get each and every confirmation from every person over all this time. Sometimes we need quick pivots. Esther couldn't sit on this, right? Her people needed her, and they needed her quickly, as we'll find in the upcoming chapters. So we have to also ask ourselves, when we are delayed, are you seeking strategy or are you procrastinating? Are you really just acting out of fear and hesitant? Timing requires us to move quickly. And those are some things that I just want you to sit with. And I'm telling you, I am preaching to myself right now because God has not been playing with me about detaching from people pleasing so that I can make the pivots that I need to make in the moments that I need to make them. All right. That said, I'm going to wrap up and leave you with our 3 declarations for today. All right. Declaration number 1. I will serve in position as a willing vessel God can use. If you're new to this, we're repeating after me. So, declaration number 2. I will be strong and courageous, for God is with me. And declaration number 3. I will move with swift obedience. Repeat those throughout this week as many times as you need. Thank you for joining me. See you next week.